We're in. We've got 5 viewers.
Okay, warm welcome to the Lockdown Lowdown. It's Sunday evening, it's 6:30. I hope everybody is well. We've got a few things to go through this week. We'll step through the agenda. We'll just have a look at the markets for last week. On the financial side, we'll look at this 50% new bonus account that the government is giving out. We're going to look at capital gains tax for you. It's going to be just a very quick overview of capital gains tax, what it is, and the different things that you can do to help reduce it. And we're going to just have a look at what's happening with boxing. Is it on the comeback and what's going on? So we're going to have a look at all of those things, and I'm going to try and speed through it so it doesn't bore you too much. And we'll start off with the markets for last week. Unfortunately, my clients have done okay in the last week. Markets are down a bit this week. A lot of it's to do with Trump and China, and it was also to do with that the Boris announcement last week wasn't met that well by the markets. They're not that convinced, so that we didn't get the upward curve. But I did say to my clients I didn't think much would happen with the markets this week. Going forward, I expect the markets to open slightly up tomorrow morning on Monday when they open in the market. But it's all about stock selection here, and I've heard a lot of people that have been doing their own thing, investing in their own shares, and they've had a really horrific time the last couple of months, and you know, it's something I do try and guide people against, so it's one of those things. But the markets themselves have been up. Now, for those of you that qualify, and I think there's 4 million people in the UK that qualify for this, there is a new account the government have issued that does seem to have gone over the radar. And I'm going to explain what it is, who qualifies, and a mistake they've made in what the government have done, and how you can legally cheat the system to benefit yourselves financially. So let's start about who can get this account. The first group of people who can get this account are those of you on universal credit and who in the last pay period earned at least £604 income. So that means you might have earned £604 last month, signed on to universal credit this month, and then bingo, you apply. The second group of people that this applies to are those that are on working tax credits. So either of you can do this. Now the account is set up and it's with National Savings, so it's money lodged with the government, and you can save a monthly amount, and it can be £50, £10, £20, it doesn't really matter. And you can stop or start this savings. At the end of 2 years, the government will add 50%. Now, this is the trick. It's not 50% to what is in your account at the end of 2 years. It is 50% of the highest balance that there was during that 2-year period. So you could have put up, your account could have gone up to a very high amount and then come down again. Let's just leave that bit there at the moment. But then you then get a balance at the end of 2 years. And if you want to carry on with the account, you go for another 2 years and it happens again. It is an unbelievable gift from the government, and this system at the moment that allows you to pay on the maximum amount in the account, which I think nobody's thought through properly, is a really good incentive. The only negative you have to watch for is for those of you who are claiming benefits is not to go above 6,000 whilst you are claiming benefit. Because it can have an impact, a little bit of an impact, but there's no harm in going up and then going down again. But that's for more advice personally. And obviously don't go above 16,000 because you lose any benefits. So you need advice, but this is a very, very clever account to open. So you can do it through the government, and as I always say every week, and I'm happy to help everybody, if anybody gets stuck, contact me and I'll help you through with it. So that's a really, really good thing. If you don't qualify personally, but you know somebody who does, then go and pass this on to them, because this is a real godsend and it's something where people can make a lot of money. And for those of you that don't have mountains of money in the bank, because you wouldn't qualify for this if you did, this is an absolute godsend and a way to get some very, very good money from the government. Okay, We covered that. Now we're going to move on to capital gains tax. So what is capital gains tax? Capital gains tax, unlike what we've just covered, are for those people that have something, and it's a tax on assets. And every single person in this country has a 12,300 capital gains tax exemption per year. And the government will tax you. Now, if you sell a second home, you are taxed. If you sell shares, you are taxed. If you sell lots of things that qualify, you are taxed. And it is, for non-residential property, it's either 10% or 20%, depending on what tax rate you are, or it's 18 or 28% if you are higher rate taxpayers. I'm going to give, for those of you, just a quick consideration of 11 quick pointers where you can reduce your capital gains tax. I'm going to do this for inheritance tax next week. So those of you who are concerned about inheritance tax, I'll cover the same thing next week on inheritance tax. So here we go. The first thing is make sure you utilise your annual exemption every year because it doesn't carry forward. Number two, if you make losses of any description in a tax year, make sure you offset them with using up a gain. There's very clever ways of doing this. Again, you need an advisor to help you. I'm here if you need help. Number three, use ISAs or pensions because those two products do not incur capital gains tax. Number four, transfer assets to your spouse. You can transfer assets from a husband to a spouse with no tax charge because that's available, and then you end up able to double your exemption. Number five, if you have investments and in that year you've made good money, but you can then basically switch your fund for more than 30 days and then switch back again, and you can utilise your capital gains tax exemption. So you can so it means when it grows again, there's no tax to pay. It's a very clever little trick. In terms of residency, use your principal primary residence relief. Now you have 9, as long as you sell if you have 2 properties for 9 months, up to 9 months you can sell the second property and not have to pay any capital gains tax on it. So that's very important. You can sometimes live in a home, a second home, before you sell it. That can reduce your capital gains tax. And you can elect a different residence to be your main home. For example, if you've got a couple that are unmarried and you've got 2 properties, one could elect one property to be their main residence, one can go for the other, and there are little loopholes there that you can use. You can invest in small companies, VCTs, EIS schemes, and that you can actually claim back previous capital gains tax bills you've paid. So if you have paid capital gains tax in the past, you can invest in these small company schemes and the government will give you your tax bill back. You could reduce your taxable income down. So for example, if you're a 40% taxpayer, make sure you take pension instead of salary, reduce your income down so that you're in the 20% tax bracket, and reduce your capital gains tax threshold to the smaller amount, either 10 or 18%. Trusts are another use. Investors relief, 10% in unlisted companies, that's another relief. And finally, maybe diversify from property because property is a much higher tax band than elsewhere, and it's a bit more difficult to juggle. Now they're very, very quick, and I know they would take a lot more explanation, but for today, that's what I wanted to do, just give you a feel for different things you can do. And again, if you know anybody that's in this position, they can, if they've got their own advisor, raise these points with your advisor and get them to do it. If the advisor hasn't told you about these, then obviously, or you haven't got an advisor, go and seek a good one. Boxing, where are we? Right, well, we've seen Eddie Hearn's state-of-the-art facility, and he's in the Matchroom HQ back garden, which looks very impressive. I'm not going to go over what I've discussed in the past about boxing and whether it should be happening in July. What I do know from being told by various people, gyms are not supposed to be open, but they are open. Boxers are going to gyms and training, so they are getting ready. I know it's against the law in effect, but I know that if they get caught they could be facing fines, but if you make a rule where it says you might be able to box competitively in July, they have to go back to the gyms. It's just a stupid system. It's inciting people to do something that they shouldn't do, but if boxers don't go into gyms, how the hell can they be fit for July? But Eddie Hearn's hoping to do 4 consecutive weekends. I think Frank Warren is aiming to try and do the same. So it does look that if infection rate slows down, that we will have boxing back in July. The board have initially said no championship fights initially, but again, what will happen, I think as time goes on, that may well change. So if infection rate stays down, I think you could well see boxing back in July. And the reason that there are no championship fights, or they're going for 4 or 6 rounds, is the board appreciate boxers won't be fully fit and won't have sparring. I've covered my views on this before. I don't want to go through and bore everybody with the same views again. If it's going to be, it's going to be, and that's what's going to happen. But obviously, without being able to import foreign boxers, there are going to be opportunities for UK fighters, and I've covered this before. If one of my fighters gets the right opportunity with the right notice at the right time, we would go ahead and take it. But it has to. We're not going to be taking a last-minute notice fight where our boxer is way overmatched at that point in his career. But at the end of the day, there are some other things that could happen. We've seen the government announce today that they are hoping that there may be a chance of having 30 million vaccines by September. Whether the efficacy will be 100% is yet to be determined, but that's something they announced in their briefing today. And that's the Oxford Sarah Gilbert vaccine, which has been spoken about quite a lot. And obviously, if that comes to fruition and it is fully effective, we may see small hall boxing back later this year. I think it's unlikely still, but there's a possibility. And if it does happen and we're all safe to go out, then that would be a miracle. But if that happened in September, then I think we've got a game changer on our hands. So for those of you that want live sport, I think you're likely to see it in July if all goes to plan with the death rate staying down. But that's just how it's going to be. But I have my views, but we'll just have to. I'd be much happier if it waited until September. But I say if it's July, it is July. Kate, got any questions?
Yep, so we've got one from Giulio Magnano again. What do you think of Matchroom setting up a venue in their own headquarters?
I think it's a great idea. I think if they're going to do it, the good thing about that is if you go to a third-party venue, and it's indoors, you have got a lot more problems in terms of keeping the venue clean and everything else. If you set it out, I've been to their HQ before, and if you put it in the garden and you have tents and you bring in facilities for boxers, it's going to be a lot safer outdoors and in that environment than it would be in an indoor arena. And I think I've looked at the drawings of it, and I think it looks a really good idea. I think Eddie Hearn has come up with a really good plan, to be honest.
And following on from that, Karina said, well, we'll be seeing Goodwin's garden promotions arriving in Leighton Buzzard.
Do you know something? Mark Little, one of my boxers, sent that to me. He said, can we do it in your garden? The garden's not big enough. Do I feel there? I've said the same thing. That I think small hall boxing without any form of backing is potentially doomed until March next year. I have been thinking about, once this gets over, if we do get a vaccine in September, of different things that we can do, and I have some ideas and some plans that I'm in talks with people at the moment. So there are potential plans that we may be able to do something, but we'll just leave it there for now. But we're always looking to go outside the box. But we have to be careful, because financially, with no gate revenue and with all the demands of the board which are fair for staging these shows while the virus is out there like this, I don't think it can happen. But if we are able to get some form of treatment vaccine kicking in, then we may be able to do a halfway house. And it's something I'm working on, but until I've done it and sealed it, then it may not happen. Then I won't say anymore. But it's possible we may do something.
Okay. Right. So next we have, with unemployment skyrocketing and expected to be around 9%, the highest since 1994. Do you think there'll be a lower purchasing power for boxing / PPV events in the near future? Great work with your weekly live updates on the financial market and boxing. That was also from Julia McIntyre.
Thank you very much. Brilliant questions. So can you please come on every week, because they're brilliant questions. Right, the first part of it was about the pay-per-view market. I actually think they'll probably charge more. Because if sport is not on the TV, I think they will go for more money, and I think you'll find that the pay-per-view market will not reduce. I think you'll find they'll go for more money. I definitely don't think it will be cheaper. I think you'll get a lot of people will club together and watch it, perhaps irrelevant to social distancing or whatever it is applies at that time. So I think that is a thing. And I think you've got boxers at the top of the tree, the ones that are pay-per-viewing. I think greedy would probably be a bit unfair, but they've got used to this big money, and I think it's very hard for Eddie and Frank to negotiate with them. I think boxers at a lower level, and what I mean by that is non-pay-per-view, British titles and whatever, may be forced to accept less money. I think it's the boxers that will bear the brunt of this, because it'll be if you don't want to fight, we'll have somebody else that will. So I think boxers at the lower level will struggle. I think the top pay-per-view guys will still demand the money they want, and I think because they'll be depending solely on pay-per-view revenue, I think they will probably, if anything, put the price up.
He also asked, do you follow any other sports apart from boxing and football?
Love darts, love watching darts. I've been to it live, but I prefer watching it on the TV. I like ice hockey. I sometimes go to Milton Keynes. I've been going to watch the MK Lightning, so I was doing that just before the lockdown. Not a rugby fan. Cricket, take it or leave it. That's it, isn't it? I think that's probably about it. I love darts and I really like ice hockey.
We have a question from Richie Gray. Do you think top tier fighters will want to box without an audience? It won't be the same. It will be like sparring.
Richie's a good man. Before I answer Richie's question, if any boxer on the small hall, okay, moans about selling tickets or can't sell tickets, go and speak to Richie Gray. He was the best self-promoting boxer I've ever come across. I spoke to Richie, the way he went out and got his sponsors and sold his tickets was amazing. He should run seminars on how to do it. But if any boxer wants advice, hook up with Richie Gray, because that man was brilliant at what he done. It's just a shame injury curtailed his career. Okay, go back to his question, which was... So the question was something about Richie Gray.
Do you think top tier fighters will want to box without an audience?
I don't think they'll be mad on doing it, but it comes down to money. When we talk about top tier fighters, you're talking probably about those that derive their sole income from boxing. So I think they have no choice. And again, I think all boxers will, if they're faced with that or nothing, they'll do it. If somebody is self-sufficient, they probably won't. Amir Khan has said he won't do it because he doesn't need the money. But if you've got a full-time pro at British level, they're going to need the money, so they're going to do it. And again, I think you'll see. I think what you will see is some probably shock results, because I don't think things will pan out. Some boxers will adapt to it better than others and be prepared for some shocks in these sort of fights.
John Power asks, do you think if China is found guilty of spreading the virus, they will pay our $3 billion that we lost?
You would hope they would, but I think they've got too much power now. The problem that you've had in this world is, in terms of economically, you're giving China far, far too much power. As you know, how many of the goods they supply around the world. They should pay everybody's bill, and they are at fault. There's no doubt. I mean, these viruses always tend to come from China and the Far East, and their eating habits are not the greatest. So yeah, they should pay. But if they turn around and tell us to get lost, what can the world do about it? Probably not very much, and that's a shame. But yeah, I think the only way to do it is the whole world put tariffs on all their goods and that sort of stuff. But then you end up with an economic war, and it's not something that the world really can afford to do now. When you want the world to get back on its feet after this.
Okay, Phil Williams, do you think journeyman boxers will get big fights when it starts back? Given the restrictions overseas, boxers will be subject to for the initial foreseeable future. Me is a perfect example in the heavyweight rankings.
Well, that's a really good question. You have some brilliant questions today. Right, what we don't know yet, and I was talking to Kay Prosper about this week, what we don't know is what they're going to want to deliver. So you're going to have Sky and BT putting 5 fights out there. Are they going to want to watch? I mean, hypothetically, take Phil, a young heavyweight 2-0 kid against Phil, who's going to give him good rounds, but the result is already known as to what's happening, because if the kid's a good quality ABA kid, Phil will give him a fight, make it entertaining. Will the TV want that as one of 5 fights? Or will the TV want competitive fight against competitive fight, a 6-0 against a 4-0. My gut feeling is that the TV will probably want to go around the small halls and try and pluck and exploit those ones that are going to be overmatched. That's my gut feeling. I hope that's not the case. But yeah, I'm not sure. And I think we'll see as time goes on, because the problem is, whilst they can't import foreign boxers, they've got a lot of UK fighters to try and work through. And unless Eddie and Frank are going to match their own against their own, they're going to look for other opponents. But then the B team might not want four fights where there's prospects against journeyman in just one big fight. They might not be acceptable as a TV product. But I guess it depends on what BT and Sky want. I think at the end of the day, it's probably not even down to Eddie and Frank. It's going to be to the broadcaster will demand what they want if they want to buy, if they want their airtime. So we'll wait and see.
He also says, "Hope you're well, boss. And by the way, the haircut looks fresh."
do you know something? It's Desperate Kate here, who's Josh's other half. She cut it for me the other day, and she got rid of it. Also, I think I'm going to abandon the barbers and give Kate a full-time job now.
Sorry, I got lost. Thoughts on the UFC events with no spectators? That was also from Julia McLeod.
I'm not a UFC fan anyway. I didn't watch it. So I can't really comment. People that I know that have watched it have said it didn't look the same. I'm hoping that when Eddie does it, if anybody's going to jazz it up a bit, it will be Eddie. So he will try and do something out of the ordinary. So I'm hopeful that it'll be more the matchroom will do it a little bit more spectacular. But obviously, I wait to see what happens when boxing comes on. I hope that all the fighters are fit, they're all well, everybody stays healthy. But I think Eddie will do a better job than the UFC in terms of presentation, that's for sure. And how Frank does it, I'm not sure. We haven't seen what Frank's trying to do yet, whether he's going to take a venue or make a purpose-built venue. So we don't know what Frank's up to yet with it.
John Power says, "Is the Democrats in USA a law unto themselves, as things they do can't be touched, but Trump gets impeached for lies? He was a Russian spy."
That's a political thing. I'm a financial advisor rather than listen. When we're talking about politics, whether we're talking about Democrats or Republicans or Labour or Conservatives, I think we can go through all politicians and expose lots of lies. I mean, I could sit here and do that. I mean, I studied politics. Some are worse than others, for sure. I accept that. But there are very few politicians that you would totally trust on any side or any spectre or any political party. I think I'll leave it there. I'm not a fan of politicians, full stop. That includes, as it happens, Trump. It includes Joe Biden. It includes Hillary Clinton. It includes, over here, it includes plenty of them. But we'll see.
And the only other question we got today was from Justin Menzies, and he said, "Will you be having shows in September?"
No, there's not a hope we'll have a show in September, because, Justin, the problem is there won't be fans in September, and we've got no vaccine. So there is no way that a small hall promoter can put a show on financially with no spectators and with all the restrictions that the board are imposing. As it stands at the moment, unless there is a breakthrough, I can't see small hall boxing back until March next year. But if there is some form of treatment or vaccine that comes into place, you may get small hall boxing back at the end of the year. And if there is a halfway house in between and somebody is smart enough to dream up an idea, which we have done, then you might find a halfway house. But whatever that halfway house is, to go in September, you've got to be selling tickets in June, which means we would be having to sell in 3 weeks' time. Not a hope in hell would we be able to sell tickets in 3 weeks' time, especially as it's not even going to be legal to do it. So a small hall show would always need a 3-month lead-in for ticket sales. Yeah. And is that it for today? Some good questions. If anybody has to say, on the financial side, if anybody does need help, just go through things we do here: savings, mortgages, tax planning, pensions, ISAs, whatever else it is. So then all by all means come to me. I had a young man who started his investment career with me this week, very small amounts of money, but it was a pleasure doing it with him and educating him and helping him, as well as the very big clients that I have. It's, I don't have a thing where I only take the bigger clients on, because I quite like to help and educate people all the way through life, make sure they buy the right house when they buy a property and stuff like that. So we're always here to do that. Thanks a lot for watching. We will be back here next Sunday at 6:30. And everybody take care out there. We might have some more news about the boxing by then because it's fast moving. So thanks for watching.